There comes a moment in every life when distractions rise, a flood, loud, relentless, overwhelming, pulling you in every direction except the one God intended. You don't drift away from purpose in one big moment. You drift one distraction at a time. But hear this, the enemy doesn't have to destroy you to stop you. He just has to divide your focus, because a distracted believer is a powerless believer. And a believer without focus becomes a believer without direction. Every time God calls you higher, distractions increase. The moment you decide to grow, chaos tries to crowd your mind. The moment you choose discipline, temptation knocks on the door. The moment you commit to prayer, interruptions multiply. The moment you begin to step into destiny, doubt starts whispering your name. That is not coincidence. That is strategy. Purpose will always provoke resistance. And distraction is the enemy's quietest form of warfare. But you were not created to be pulled apart. You were created to be focused, centered, grounded, and intentional. God placed purpose inside you, but He also gave you authority over your attention. You do not have to follow every noise. You do not have to respond to every voice. You do not have to entertain every fear. You get to decide what deserves your energy. You get to decide what enters your mind. You get to decide what shapes your direction. If you want to walk in God's purpose, you must reclaim your mind. You must silence the storm within long enough to hear the whisper of God. Purpose often speaks softly because confidence doesn't need to shout, but distractions scream. They try to drown out clarity with anxiety. They try to drown out wisdom with urgency. They try to drown out vision with worry. But when you learn to still yourself, when you learn to breathe, when you learn to speak truth to your own soul, everything changes. Your spirit rises, your thoughts settle, your path opens. Distraction fights you because purpose frightens the enemy. You don't get attacked in the places you're empty. You get attacked in the places you're effective. Your gifts are dangerous. Your obedience is dangerous. Your growth is dangerous. Your clarity is dangerous. So distractions come not because you're weak, but because you're powerful. They come not because you're off track, but because you're getting closer to alignment. The enemy is terrified of what you will become when you finally focus. You must learn to protect your focus like it is holy, because it is. Focus is the container that holds your calling. Focus is the shield that guards your clarity. Focus is the bridge between vision and manifestation. Every step you take toward discipline strengthens your purpose. Every moment you turn away from noise strengthens your spirit. Every time you say no to distractions, you are saying yes to destiny. And you cannot walk in destiny without learning to command your inner world. Your inner dialogue must become your spiritual anchor. You must talk yourself back into alignment when your emotions try to lead you astray. You must remind yourself of your identity when lies rise against your calling. You must speak life over your path when discouragement tries to cloud your vision. Your inner voice must become a compass, not a critic guiding you back to where God has positioned you. When you stop moving by impulse and start moving by intention, your entire life begins to shift. You stop reacting to every situation and start responding from a place of spiritual wisdom. You stop letting emotions dictate your decisions and start letting purpose decide your steps. Purpose doesn't rush. Purpose doesn't panic. Purpose doesn't quit. Purpose moves with clarity, courage, and conviction. You are not here by accident. You are not gifted by coincidence. You are not called without reason. God placed something inside you that cannot be birthed in a distracted life. This season requires focus. This season requires discipline. This season requires inner strength. This season requires spiritual awareness. And everything God is calling you to walk into will demand that you rise above the noise trying to pull you away. So lift your head, refocus your mind, strengthen your spirit, silence every voice that contradicts what God has spoken. The distractions around you may be loud, but the purpose within you is louder. It's time to lean into it. It's time to honor it. It's time to focus on it with everything in you, because when you overcome distractions, you don't just reclaim your attention, you reclaim your destiny. Reclaiming your mind from the noise begins with understanding that your thoughts are not helpless passengers on a runaway train. They respond to direction, intention, and spiritual authority. Too many people live as if their minds belong to the loudest voice around them. Culture, fear, social media, comparison, pressure, or the echo of old wounds. But you were not created to be mastered by noise. You were created to steward your inner world. What goes on inside you shapes everything outside you, and until you reclaim that territory, distractions will always find an open door. Noise doesn't always come as chaos. Sometimes it disguises itself as business, productivity, or just checking. The constant hum of activity keeps you from hearing the deeper, quieter places where purpose lives. You wake up in the morning, and before your feet hit the ground, your mind is already swarmed with what you must do, who needs you, what you haven't finished, and what might go wrong. It's like starting the day in a storm without ever asking, who controls this storm, me or the noise? When your mind is filled with clutter, clarity becomes a stranger. But when you reclaim it, clarity becomes your companion. Reclaiming your mind begins with intentional stillness. I'm not talking about forcing silence around you. I'm talking about cultivating silence within you. You can be in a crowded room and still carry internal peace. You can be in the middle of responsibilities and still access inner alignment. The power lies in learning how to tell yourself, return, settle, focus. Your mind listens to the voice you use most consistently. If you constantly narrate panic, your mind will follow panic. If you narrate purpose, your mind will move toward purpose. You are always shaping your inner world by the words you speak to it. Your inner dialogue must become a sanctuary rather than a battleground. Too often, we let our internal conversations be dominated by doubt, insecurity, and fear. These voices rise because noise always wants an audience, but the moment you pause and speak with authority, peace, be still, you remind the noise that it does not own you. You own you. You have the right to tell your thoughts what to meditate on. You have the right to deny access to anything that disrupts your peace. You have the right to redirect your mind from wandering into places that drain your strength. Reclaiming your mind also requires discernment. Not every thought deserves your energy. Not every emotion deserves your agreement. Not every voice deserves your attention. You must learn to ask, does this thought align with God's purpose for me? Does this emotion build my faith or erode it? Does this voice speak truth or simply echo insecurity? When you start filtering what enters your mind, you become the gatekeeper of your own atmosphere. A guarded mind is a powerful mind, and a powerful mind is a purposeful mind. There will always be noise around you, responsibilities, challenges, opinions, and unexpected moments. You cannot eliminate all external noise, but you can eliminate internal permission. Noise only becomes a threat when you allow it to settle. Your mind may momentarily shift, but you can call it back. You can train your mind the way an athlete trains their body, bringing it under discipline. Discipline doesn't mean perfection. Discipline means consistency. Every time your mind drifts into worry, you gently pull it back. Every time it falls into fear, you remind it of truth. Every time it wanders into distraction, you guide it to purpose again. Over time, Your mind learns your voice and responds to your leadership. Reclaiming your mind also means letting go of what no longer belongs in your mental space. Sometimes the noise is old memories, past hurts, lingering anxieties, or unresolved narratives that repeat themselves even though the season has changed. You must release what tries to rehearse ruin in your mind. You cannot walk into a purposeful future with a mind chained to yesterday's noise. When you let go, you create space for clarity, creativity, strength, and direction. Your mind is sacred territory. It is where God whispers, where ideas are born, where vision grows, where faith takes root. You cannot afford to let distractions dominate the soil where destiny is planted. When you reclaim your mind, you reclaim your ability to hear, to believe, to decide, and to move forward with confidence. Recognizing distraction as spiritual warfare begins with understanding that not everything that pulls your attention is harmless. Some distractions are subtle strategies designed to weaken your focus, dilute your passion, and delay your assignment. They don't always arrive as obvious attacks. They often come dressed as opportunities, obligations, inconveniences, or emotional noise. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you when he can simply divide you. A divided mind cannot carry a full purpose, and a distracted heart cannot hold steady to divine direction. That is why distraction must be seen not as a minor inconvenience, but as an intentional tactic that targets your destiny. Spiritual warfare is not always a battle of visible forces. Often it is a battle of attention. Whatever captures your attention eventually shapes your direction. If the enemy can occupy your mind long enough, he can influence your steps without ever touching your feet. Distraction is one of the most effective weapons in this realm because it feels natural. It feels like life. It feels like urgency. It feels like stress. And in that feeling, it becomes easy to forget that you are not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against patterns, voices, atmospheres, and spiritual influences that want to disconnect you from clarity. Distraction works by exhaustion. It drains you one small interruption at a time. A worry here, a doubt there, a comparison, a delay, an unexpected situation designed to shift your emotional state while you are busy reacting to life. You lose sight of what God is developing within you. The enemy doesn't always attack your strength. Sometimes he attacks your focus because he knows that a focused believer is dangerous. A focused believer is disciplined. A focused believer can hear the whisper of God in a noisy world. A focused believer becomes unshakable, and unshakable people are unstoppable. When you recognize distraction as warfare, you stop treating it casually. You stop letting everything and everyone access your mind. You begin to discern when something is sent to help you grow and when something is sent to pull you off course. Not every open door is a divine invitation. Some doors are traps designed to consume your energy and steal your time. Some conversations are crafted to shift your mood. Some conflicts appear out of nowhere simply to break your rhythm. When your spirit becomes alert, you start noticing patterns in your distractions instead of treating them as coincidences. Distraction often intensifies when you are close to breakthrough. The moment you make progress, something rises to slow your pace. The moment you begin to hear God clearly, something interferes with your peace. The moment you start moving in the right direction, something or someone demands your attention in the wrong direction. This is not random. Distraction increases when destiny is near because purpose terrifies the enemy. A person walking in alignment is a threat to darkness. So the enemy strategizes to interrupt your alignment before it grows strong enough to shift your entire life. Seeing distraction as spiritual warfare also requires understanding that the battlefield is internal. The enemy may use external events, but the battle is ultimately for your inner world, your thoughts, emotions, priorities, and convictions. If he can unsettle you inside, he can derail your progress outside. That is why you must learn to guard your heart and discipline your thoughts. You cannot afford to be spiritually passive when your destiny demands spiritual awareness. Passivity is the breeding ground for distraction, but awareness is the force that confronts it. When you begin to recognize distraction for what it truly is, you gain power over it. You stop letting discouragement become your default reaction. You stop letting unexpected delays break your momentum. You stop allowing emotional triggers to dictate your decisions. Instead, you respond with intention. You respond with prayer. You respond with discipline. You respond with clarity. Because once you know you're in a battle, you stop fighting with your bare hands and you start using spiritual weapons, peace, focus, truth, wisdom, and discernment. Distraction loses its power when you call it by its name, when you refuse to be entertained by what weakens you, when you refuse to negotiate with what steals your strength, when you refuse to surrender your attention to things that were never meant to have it. The moment you see distraction as warfare, you rise into a new level of focus, a new level of authority, and a new level of spiritual awareness that positions you to walk firmly and confidently in the direction God intended for your life. Activating inner dialogue as your spiritual GPS begins with understanding that the words you speak to yourself carry direction. They don't just echo in your mind, they guide your steps, shape your expectations, and influence your spiritual posture. Your inner dialogue is the compass of your soul, constantly pointing either to alignment or away from it. Every thought you entertain and every sentence you rehearse is quietly steering your life. When you become intentional about that internal conversation, you stop drifting and you start directing. Most people underestimate the force of their inner dialogue. They assume thoughts are random, accidental, or simply emotional reactions, but thoughts are seeds and inner dialogue waters them. What you meditate on grows. If you rehearse fear long enough, fear becomes your default setting. If you meditate on failure, your confidence shrinks until your decisions follow the pattern of defeat. But when your inner dialogue is saturated with truth, strength, and God's purpose, your life begins to align with courage and clarity. Your inner world becomes a navigational system that keeps you on course even when everything around you tries to pull you off. Your spiritual GPS begins functioning the moment you learn to talk to yourself with intention. Not empty affirmations, not shallow positivity, but deep reminders rooted in who you were created to be. This is the voice that rises when you feel overwhelmed, saying, "Stay steady. You were built for this." This is the voice that interrupts discouragement and whispers, "Keep walking." Purpose is still ahead of you. This is the voice that challenges doubt with, "You've come too far to turn back now." That inner dialogue becomes a stabilizing force, guiding you away from emotional detours and pulling you back toward divine direction. When your inner conversation aligns with God's truth, you start hearing clarity where you once heard chaos. Your emotions stop dictating your path because your inner voice begins filtering them. Instead of reacting out of insecurity or impulse, you respond from a place of spiritual awareness. You become more intentional about what you think, how you think, and why you think it. The more intentional you are, the more accurate your inner guidance becomes. It's like recalibrating the internal compass so it points not toward convenience, but toward calling. Inner dialogue as spiritual GPS also requires honesty. You cannot guide yourself with denial. You must acknowledge your fears, your weaknesses, your distractions, and then speak truth into them. When you feel unqualified, your inner dialogue must say, I may not have everything, but I have enough to start. When you feel stuck, it must say, movement begins with one choice. When you feel unseen or forgotten, it must say, purpose is unfolding even when progress is hidden. That honest but faith-filled dialogue becomes a spiritual alignment tool that recalibrates your direction every time life tries to push you off course. You must also speak to your future, not just your present. Inner dialogue should not merely describe what you see. It should declare where you're going. You guide yourself by speaking vision into your own atmosphere. You remind yourself of the assignment that lies ahead. You remind yourself of the discipline required, the character needed, the strength available to you. This forward, focused dialogue pushes you beyond temporary emotions and anchors you to long-term purpose. When you talk like someone who is going somewhere, you start moving like someone who is going somewhere. Your inner dialogue also acts as a shield. When discouraging voices rise around you, your internal voice must rise louder. When external criticism comes, your inner voice must affirm your identity. When circumstances contradict your calling, your inner voice must stand firm in truth. This shielded dialogue protects your focus, guards your heart, and sustains your confidence. It becomes a spiritual defense system that keeps you aligned when external pressure tries to distort your direction. Activating your inner dialogue as spiritual GPS means you stop waiting for motivation to come from the outside. You generate it within. You stop depending on others to remind you of your purpose. You remind yourself. You speak to your soul the way a leader speaks to a team, clearly, confidently, and consistently. Your inner dialogue becomes prophetic, instructive, and empowering. It speaks not from the level you are on, but from the level you are growing toward. When your internal narrative shifts, your life shifts with it. Your steps become more intentional. Your decisions become more aligned. Your resilience grows stronger. Your clarity becomes sharper because your inner voice stops merely reacting to life and starts directing it. The conversation within you becomes the compass that constantly points you back toward purpose, no matter how many distractions rise around you. Silencing the lies that fight your calling begins with recognizing that not every voice that speaks to you deserves to influence you. Some of the most dangerous lies you will ever face don't come from people around you. They rise from within you. They come from old wounds, past experiences, hidden fears, and spiritual interference that attempts to distort your identity and weaken your purpose. These lies creep into your thoughts when you're vulnerable, tired, isolated, or stepping into new levels. They're subtle enough to sound familiar, yet destructive enough to limit your potential if left unchallenged. Lies often come disguised as truth because they use fragments of your past to build arguments against your future. They whisper, "You're not ready," even when God says you're appointed. They echo, "You're not capable," even though you've conquered more than you give yourself credit for. They insist you don't deserve it, despite grace covering your entire journey. Lies gain power only when you agree with them. The moment you start treating them as facts, they shape your behavior, influence your decisions, and restrict your faith. The first step to silencing them is identifying their source and refusing to let them become your internal narrative. These lies often rise at pivotal moments when you're stepping into something new, when you're healing from something old, or when God is stretching you into unfamiliar territory, they target your weak points, but their timing reveals their intention. Lies don't fight people who are going nowhere. They fight those who carry something valuable. They fight visionaries. They fight leadership. They fight purpose. They fight destiny. The enemy attacks what he fears. And if he can persuade you to doubt yourself, he doesn't need to stop you. You'll stop yourself. That is why silencing lies is not optional. Your future depends on it. Silencing lies requires you to confront them with truth, not emotion. Lies feed on emotion. Fear amplifies them. Insecurity validates them. Exhaustion magnifies them. But truth dismantles them. Truth doesn't argue, truth reveals. And once truth is spoken, lies lose their foundation. When a lie says, "You're unworthy," truth declares, "You were chosen before you were formed." When a lie says, "You can't handle this," truth answers, "Strength is made perfect in weakness." When a lie says, "This will break you," truth whispers, "All things work together for your good." You silence lies by speaking truth louder and more consistently than fear speaks doubt. Another powerful way to silence lies is to renew your inner narrative. You must retrain your mind, reject anything that contradicts your calling. Thoughts are not permanent residents, they are visitors, and you choose who stays. When a lie enters your mind, your internal response must be immediate. You can't entertain it, replay it, or negotiate with it. Lies grow in the soil of meditation. The more attention you give them, the deeper their roots grow. You must begin replacing them instantly with declarations that realign you with purpose. I am capable. I am equipped. I am growing. I am called. You're not just encouraging yourself, you're building a new mental environment that cannot host old lies. Silencing lies also requires healing. Some lies thrive because they attach themselves to unhealed areas in your heart. If rejection shaped you, lies of inadequacy find a comfortable place to live. If failure traumatized you, lies of unworthiness grow easily. Healing uproots the soil where lies survive. As you heal, your discernment sharpens. You stop accepting every negative thought as truth and start recognizing when something does not match who God says you are. Healing gives you the internal strength to say, "This thought does not belong to me," and shut it down before it gains influence. You must also silence lies by refusing to replay what God has already redeemed. The enemy loves to remind you of past mistakes, old failure, or moments you regret, because he wants you to believe that your past disqualifies your present and discredits your future. But every time you revisit shame, you reopen the door for lies. You must stand firm in the reality that grace covers what guilt tries to resurrect. Your calling is not built on perfection. It is built on obedience. You silence lies by refusing to let history define destiny. Silencing lies also means separating your identity from your feelings. Feelings fluctuate, but identity remains constant. You may feel unprepared, but you are still called. You may feel overwhelmed, but you are still equipped. You may feel uncertain, but you are still chosen. Purpose is not attached to your emotions. It is attached to God's intention for your life. When you stop letting your feelings create your identity, lies lose one of their strongest weapons. In the end, silencing lies is a daily choice, a deliberate act of spiritual discipline. Lies may knock on the door of your mind, but you decide whether they enter, you decide whether they influence, you decide whether they stay. And every time you choose truth over deception, you take back authority over your calling. Protecting your focus like it's wholly begins with the realization that focus is not just a mental skill, it is a spiritual asset. It is sacred because it determines what grows in your life. Whatever you consistently focus on becomes stronger, and whatever you neglect becomes weaker. Your purpose cannot thrive in a distracted mind, and your calling cannot be fulfilled when your attention is scattered across things that drain your strength. Focus is holy because it is tied directly to assignment. When God gives you a purpose, He also gives you the responsibility to guard the mental and spiritual space that allows that purpose to unfold. Your focus is sacred because it represents your yes to God. Every time you choose what matters over what distracts you, you're honoring what God placed inside you. Distractions don't just take your time. They take your strength, your clarity, your creativity, and your spiritual alignment. They pull you away from the place where vision becomes clear and direction becomes strong. That's why the enemy doesn't always try to fight you with dramatic attacks. He often tries to wear you down with small leaks in your attention. A little compromise here, a little delay there, a little emotional agitation, a little unnecessary involvement until your mind feels too cluttered to recognize God's voice. Protecting your focus requires boundaries, and boundaries are not barriers. They are protection around what is valuable. When something is holy, you don't let just anything near it. You don't let careless hands touch it. You don't allow unnecessary interference to contaminate it. Protecting your focus means discerning what deserves your energy and what does not. You have to know when to say no without guilt. You have to know when to step away without apology. You have to know when to shut the door so your spirit can breathe again. Not everyone understands the cost of your calling, so not everyone will understand why you guard your focus so fiercely. But your assignment was given to you, not to their opinions. Focus must be protected from external distractions and internal ones. External distractions come in the form of people, demands, noise, and situations that keep you busy but not productive. Internal distractions come from your own doubts, insecurities, emotional cycles, and unprocessed fears. Protecting your focus means addressing both. You must quiet your environment when necessary, and you must confront your inner world when it rises against your peace. You can't protect your focus if you won't face what keeps interrupting it. You protect your focus by practicing intentional presence. That means being fully where you are, fully engaged in what you're doing, and fully committed to what God is building in you at that moment. When you're praying, be present. When you're planning, be present. When you're resting, be present. When you're working, be present. Scattered attention produces weak results. Purposeful presence produces spiritual strength. The more present you are, the more clarity you gain. And the more clarity you gain, the more progress you make. Protecting your focus also requires understanding that not everything urgent is important. Life will constantly try to pull you into urgency, other people's emergencies, sudden demands, unexpected tasks that seem pressing but hold no real weight. Urgency steals your rhythm. When you live in reaction instead of intention, your focus becomes fragmented. You must learn to pause and evaluate. Does this matter to my purpose? Does this deserve my time? Is this a divine assignment or a distraction dressed as responsibility? When you stop responding to everything that demands you, you start responding to what God directs you toward. Your focus is holy because it shapes the atmosphere of your life. When your mind is centered, your emotions settle. When your emotions settle, your decisions improve. When your decisions improve, when your path becomes clearer, when your path becomes clearer, your purpose accelerates. Protecting your focus is protecting your progress. Many people are not defeated because they lack talent or opportunity. They are defeated because their attention is constantly stolen by things unworthy of their calling. You must treat your focus as something rare and precious. Guard it in the morning before the world makes its request. Guard it in your conversations so you don't pour energy into places that give nothing back. Guard it in your habits because undisciplined patterns create open doors for distraction. Guard it in your thoughts because the mind left unchecked will wander into places that delay destiny. Protecting your focus is an act of spiritual maturity. It is choosing purpose over popularity, discipline over impulse, clarity over chaos, and calling over comfort. Your focus is the lens through which you see what God is doing. When the lens is clean, vision comes alive. When the lens is cluttered, everything looks distorted. That is why your focus must be treated as holy. It is the doorway through which purpose is revealed and fulfilled. Moving with purpose instead of impulse begins with understanding that your life was never meant to be governed by momentary reactions. Impulse is driven by emotion, urgency, and unpredictability. Purpose is driven by intention, clarity, and alignment with what God is shaping in you. When you move by impulse, you are pushed by whatever feels strong in the moment. Fear, frustration, excitement, pressure, or insecurity. But when you move by purpose, you are guided by conviction, wisdom, and divine timing. One leads to regret. The other leads to destiny. Your calling needs decisions built on intention, not instability. Impulsive living is exhausting because it keeps you reacting instead of leading. You become a responder to life instead of an architect of your own steps. Every emotion becomes a doorway. Every inconvenience becomes a distraction. Every opportunity becomes a temptation. Impulse pulls you in multiple directions at once, scattering your energy and weakening your progress. You end each day feeling busy but not productive, active but not aligned. Impulse keeps you moving, but it never guarantees you're moving in the right direction. Purpose, on the other hand, is steady. Purpose doesn't rush. Purpose doesn't panic. Purpose doesn't chase validation. Purpose knows where it is going and why it is going there. To move with purpose, you must establish a clear internal compass. Your compass is your why, your God-given assignment, your values, your convictions, your vision. When you have a strong why, your decisions start aligning with your identity instead of your emotions. You don't accept every offer because you know your lane. You don't jump at every challenge because you know your season. You don't get entangled in every conflict because you know your peace is too expensive to surrender. Purpose filters what tries to access your life. Impulse says, act now. Purpose says, think, pray, and then move. Purposeful movement, which requires discipline. You cannot live by purpose if you do not train yourself to pause. Before reacting, you breathe. Before committing, you evaluate. Before responding, you reflect. That pause is powerful because it disconnects you from emotional urgency. It creates space for wisdom to speak. It gives God room to guide your next step. Many of the mistakes people regret were made because they moved faster than their spirit could process. Purpose gives you permission to slow down so you can move correctly. You stop rushing into decisions just to escape discomfort or silence anxiety. You start choosing paths that align with long growth rather than short-term emotion. To move with purpose, you must also be willing to disappoint impulse-driven people. Some will not understand why you don't rush into every situation or jump at every chance. They may label you slow, detached, or overly cautious, but they are responding from a place of impulse and expect you to do the same. Purposeful people are often misunderstood because they don't allow external pressure to dictate internal direction. You must be confident enough in your calling to let people misunderstand you temporarily so your purpose can unfold correctly. You are not obligated to follow anyone's urgency except God's. Moving with purpose demands focus. Impulse invites you to chase everything. Purpose invites you to prioritize what matters. Not every good idea is a God idea. Not every open door leads to destiny. Not every exciting opportunity is aligned with your assignment. You must learn to identify the difference. Purpose helps you distinguish between distraction and direction. If something pulls you away from who you are becoming, it is not purpose. If something drains your energy without producing growth, it is not purpose. If something feels urgent but lacks clarity, it is impulse disguised as importance. Purposeful living also requires patience. Not all progress is immediate. Not all results are visible. Impulse wants instant gratification, quick answers, and fast outcomes. Purpose understands that some things take time. Developing your gift takes time. Healing takes time. Building character takes time. Establishing consistency takes time. Walking in calling takes time. Purpose trusts the process even when the process feels slow. It knows that divine timing is part of divine strategy. Moving with purpose instead of impulse is also about alignment. Your decisions must align with your future, not your fears. Many impulsive choices are simply reactions to fear, fear of missing out, fear of falling behind, fear of being alone, fear of failing. But when you move with purpose, you act from faith instead of fear. You choose paths that produce peace rather than panic. You choose relationships that build you rather than drain you. You choose opportunities that stretch you rather than distract you. Each move becomes intentional, meaningful, and connected to something greater than the moment. Purpose-driven movement transforms how you see your life. You stop drifting. You stop reacting. You stop living in cycles. You start moving in patterns of growth. You begin building a life that reflects the calling inside you, one deliberate step at a time.